What's going on, guys? I'm the Wrestling King coming at you with the WWE 2022 Pay-Per-View DVD Collection video. So I'm a little late on making this, but it took me a little longer to find Survivor Series than I planned, and I've been a little busier, so I haven't been able to make this video. But I'm getting to it now and getting it out to you guys as soon as I can. So 2022 was actually, in my opinion, a really good year for the WWE. It was kind of a crazy year. Obviously, you had Vince McMahon retiring, which threw off WWE a little bit. Some things improved, which, you had Triple H taking over, and kind of this last half of 2022 was under his creative completely. So, definitely some big things, and even before Vince left, some crazy things were happening. You had the return of Cody Rhodes, you had Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns feud, you had Stone Cold Steve Austin. But we'll get into that in each pay-per-view. And obviously you can see we had a little bit of a change to the pay-per-view scheduling. Somewhat. You had some new pay-per-views thrown in here. And, overall I think it was a pretty good year for wrestling. So, just wrestling in ring, what I mean. So we're going to get right into it, starting out with the first ever Day 1 pay-per-view. So, for the first time since, I believe, 2007, WWE put a pay-per-view before the Royal Rumble, which I actually kind of like. I know they're not doing it this year, and understandably, they want to do pay-per-views on Saturdays, and if they had Day 1, they would have to do it on a Sunday, or they would have had to do it on a Sunday. So, it made sense, considering that, but I think it was a good idea. This was kind of the New Year's Revolution pay-per-view for WWE, even though it only lasted for a year. So on the cover, you had, you just have this kind of planet behind them. I don't know if it's supposed to be Earth or not, but you just got or maybe it's the sun and the moon. Maybe I'm just being stupid. Yeah, I think that's more what it is. And then you got your Day 1 logo, and you got your Fatal 5-Way main event right there. And this pay-per-view was thrown off a little bit because Roman Reigns was supposed to be at it, and then I think he got COVID, so he couldn't show up. So instead of having Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns, you had Brock Lesnar join the main event for the WWE Championship. You had your Fatal 5-Way, Brock Lesnar, Big E, Kevin Owens, Seth Rollins, and Bobby Lashley. And Brock Lesnar won the WWE title here. And then you also had The Miz versus Edge, which would be the first match in their feud, and they'd have another match at the Royal Rumble. You had Beth Phoenix interfering, as well as Maurice. You had the Street Profits versus RK Bro for the Raw Tag Team titles. I believe you had Madcap Moss versus Drew McIntyre on this show as well. And then you had Becky Lynch versus Liv Morgan for the Raw Women's title, which I actually really enjoyed Becky Lynch's Raw Women's title run during this time. And there's your disc. And one thing I forgot to mention, for 2022, we weren't even supposed to get DVDs in the United States, but then all of a sudden, Day 1 came out, the Rumble came out, and here we are still getting DVDs in 2022. So, I guess I'm not going to complain about it. But next up, we have the Royal Rumble 2022. A lot of people kind of crap on this pay-per-view, and they don't like it very much. But I enjoyed it at the time quite a bit, and I don't mind this show at all, actually. The cover is very chaotic, but I like that because it's the Rumble. You got the countdown in the background, and then your ring in the center with the Rumble logo. That's pretty cool. And then you have, Roman Reigns front and center, Brock Lesnar, Becky Lynch, Bobby Lashley, Orton. There you go. And then on the spine you have The Miz and Maurice up top, and then Edge and Beth Phoenix down below, and your Royal Rumble logo. So like I said, I enjoyed this show. You had Becky Lynch versus Doudrop for the Raw Women's title. Not my favorite match in Becky Lynch's title reign, but it was solid for what it was. You also had Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins for the Universal title in a hell of an opener. Ended kind of screwy, but I thought it was still a good match. And then you had Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship, which Brock Lesnar would lose to Bobby Lashley due to Roman Reigns interfering. Then you had not Becky Lynch. You had The Miz and Maurice versus Edge and Beth Phoenix in a mixed tag match, which was a lot better than I expected it to be. And then your 2 Royal Rumble matches won by Ronda Rousey returning for the first time, or this was her first time back since, I think, WrestleMania 35, so 2019. So it had been almost 3 years. And then you had Brock Lesnar winning the Rumble for the men's in the main event. And I will admit, the men's Rumble was not the greatest. I still like this show, but I can admit that the men's Rumble kind of lacked a bit. And there you go. You got your pretty just basic Rumble discs. Just a plain background and then red and black lettering. So yeah, like I said, I didn't mind that show. I know I enjoyed it more than other people. And then next up, we have our first Saudi Arabia show of the year, Elimination Chamber. So I think this is the first time the Elimination Chamber show was in Saudi Arabia. And, you know, I think we had some pretty good matches for what I remember here. But obviously you have a bunch of shining lights and buildings in the background, and then the chamber shining up there, and then just Brock Lesnar staring into your soul. And on the spine you got Becky Lynch and Lita, which, awesome match. Becky Lynch and Lita for the Raw Women's title. Who would have thought we'd get that in 2022? But that was probably the best match on this show, I'm not going to lie. We also had Drew McIntyre versus Madcap Moss once again. And just building up with Corbin and McIntyre's feud, which is very forgettable. You had Ronda Rousey and Naomi versus Sonya Deville and Charlotte Flair in a tag title match. Or not tag title, but just tag team match. So, you know, that was there, just building for Ronda and Charlotte. You had Roman Reigns and Goldberg, and pretty lackluster, short match, but, you know, it's just a Goldberg match, whatever. Roman Reigns defending the Universal title before Mania, so it was what it was. And then you had your 2 chamber matches. The first was a number 1 contenders chamber to face Becky Lynch at WrestleMania, and that was, well, I guess technically Becky Lynch or Lita, but it was Becky Lynch. Bianca Belair would win that, beating Alexa Bliss, Nikki Ash, Rhea Ripley, Liv Morgan, and Doudrop. And then you had Brock Lesnar winning the WWE Championship Chamber, beating out Bobby Lashley, Riddle, Austin Theory, AJ Styles, and Seth Rollins. And Bobby Lashley, if I didn't say him, I'm pretty sure I did. And then there's your disc art, bright green. So there you go. So not the greatest show leading into WrestleMania, but there were some good matches. I think the men's chamber and Becky Lynch and Lita were pretty good. And then we move on to the granddaddy of them all, WrestleMania 38. The most stupendous 2-night WrestleMania in history, they tagged it. And it was a very good WrestleMania, I will give it that. I thoroughly enjoyed both nights of WrestleMania. You know, obviously there were some low points of each night, but the high points, there were quite a few of those. So you got your big main event there, Roman and Brock. And then, you know, you got Taker down there who went into Hall of Fame this year. You had Stone Cold, your women's title matches there. Or women's champions and the challengers. So I'll take this slipcover off, show you the back. Or actually first, there's the spine. You got the Usos and RK Bro, both of the tag team champions. So I don't have a match listing up for this show, so I'm going to go based off of memory. So if I forget something, don't yell at me. But it was a very jam-packed weekend and a very good show. You had the Usos versus Shinsuke Nakamura and Rick Boogs. This is night 1, of course. You had Drew McIntyre and Happy Corbin. You had Becky Lynch and Bianca Belair in a fantastic Raw Women's title match. And then a not-so-great women's title match, Charlotte and Ronda Rousey. It was just there. But then we also had Cody Rhodes returning to WWE, which I think everyone was kind of expecting before this show, but it was still shocking. And putting on a barn burner against Seth Rollins. Fantastic match. And then, speaking of great moments and great matches, Stone Cold Steve Austin for the first time since I think WrestleMania 19, wrestled a match against Kevin Owens. They had a no-holds-barred match. It was supposed to be the KO show. We were all hoping for Stone Cold to wrestle, and he did in Dallas, Texas, and I thought that was fantastic. It was 30 minutes, too, like a 30-minute match. He didn't just go in there, do a couple stunners, and leave. He took some bumps, and I loved that moment. That was awesome. Then you move on to night 2 of WrestleMania, and you had your women's tag title Fatal 4-Way, which I believe Sasha Banks and Naomi won before they dipped out of the company. And then you had Omos versus Bobby Lashley, kind of battle of the Titans there, if you want to call it that. You also had Sheamus, Ridge Holland, and I'll call him Pete Dunne, even though he's Butch, versus the New Day, Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston. And then you had your Raw Tag Team Triple Threat as the opener, Alpha Academy, Street Profits, and RK Bro, and that was a pretty good title match, I'll give it that. You also had Pat McAfee versus Austin Theory in what I thought was a really fun match. I love seeing Pat McAfee wrestling in a match there. You had Edge versus AJ Styles in a pretty good match. I don't think their matches were fantastic, but they definitely had decent matches. And before I get to the main event, one thing I forgot to mention, on night 1 you had Logan Paul and The Miz versus Rey and Dominic Mysterio. So Logan Paul's first match in WWE. And we'll get more into him later throughout the year. But then you move on to the main event for the WWE and Universal Championship to unify the titles. Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar. And I think that match was very hyped up. People were very excited for this one compared to their previous matches, but it didn't quite live up to the hype. But I think later in the year, they had a much better match, and I will get to that later down the line. So, yeah, there it is. WrestleMania 38. Really good show. Next up, we have WrestleMania Backlash. So, yes, the Backlash from WrestleMania. And on the cover, you just have Edge as, he's got the red light shining on him. I think it's pretty cool artwork. There's your spine for you. So, I think some people enjoyed this show more than I did. I thought it was okay. Just your average after WrestleMania show. It was alright. Nothing too high of stakes going on. You had Omos and Bobby Lashley in a rematch. You had Ronda Rousey winning the SmackDown Women's title from Charlotte. I believe they had a no DQ match here, or a Falls Count Anywhere. Or no, it was an I Quit match. I forgot. And Ronda Rousey would win here. You had Madcap Moss versus Happy Corbin. You had Edge versus AJ Styles, and this is where Rhea Ripley would join forces with Edge and Damian Priest, and kind of form that original Judgment Day stable. You had Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins in the second match of theirs that was equally as good as their WrestleMania match. And then your main event, you had the 6-man tag between RK Bro and Drew McIntyre, and then the Usos and Roman Reigns, the Bloodline. So there you go. And there's your artwork, some red WrestleMania Backlash artwork. There you go. And then we move on to Hell in a Cell 2022. I don't think this is the best show either, but it does have one very memorable moment. So you got Cody Rhodes front and center, as he should be, with his coat burning up and the Hell in a Cell burning behind him. Also on the spine, taking over this DVD. Got Bianca Belair down there. So there you go. So very cool artwork on the back. I do like that there's flames everywhere. I think that adds a nice element to it. So we had Happy Corbin and Madcap Moss in another match. I think this was no DQ. You had Austin Theory versus Mustafa Ali for the United States Championship. You had Omos and MVP versus Bobby Lashley in a 2-on-1 handicap match. You had a triple threat for the Raw Women's title, Becky Lynch, Asuka, and Bianca Belair. You had Kevin Owens versus Ezekiel. So who remembers that? Am I right? Wow, that was something else. And then you had a mixed tag 6-man or 6-person tag. You had Judgment Day, Edge, Priest, and Ripley versus Finn Balor, AJ Styles, and Liv Morgan. And then you got Seth Rollins there with the Dusty Rhodes themed attire. Him and Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes' last match before he had to go get surgery and repair that torn pec. See it right there. That was another fantastic match. They deserved a main event this show. And it's the only thing that really made the show worthwhile, I'll be honest. The rest of it was just there. Cody Rhodes putting on a hell of a performance. And as well as Seth Rollins. I mean, they had a great match here. And if you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm just trying to get this poster open. So you did get a poster with this, which is very cool. So there you go. That's Hell in a Cell 2022. Like I said, not the best show, but really great match and performance from the main event. Next up, we move to one of my favorite pay-per-views of the year, Money in the Bank. So you got Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch, your power couple, just making it rain with cash, money everywhere, safe in the background, the briefcase there. So pretty cool artwork, you know. I love the poster artwork for DVD covers. It's always pretty nice. Then you got Ronda Rousey up top, the Usos down low. There you go. So, on this show, let's take a look at it. You got your 2 Money in the Bank matches, obviously, won by Liv Morgan, and she would cash in after Ronda Rousey beat Natalya for the SmackDown Women's title, and Liv Morgan would become your new SmackDown Women's Champion at this show. So, you know, really nice moment for her. I'm glad she got to win the title at some point. And then you had Austin Theory winning the men's Money in the Bank ladder match, which, really good ladder match, I got to admit. I think it was a very good main event to this show. And, you know, I wasn't happy at the time that Austin Theory won, and it didn't really do anything because he failed to cash in for the U.S. title, but it is what it is. Then you have Austin Theory earlier in the night losing the United States Championship to Bobby Lashley. So there you go. You also had Bianca Belair versus Carmella for the Raw Women's title, and the Usos versus the Street Profits for the undisputed WWE Tag Team titles. They hold both the Raw and SmackDown now. And you got a Matt Riddle sticker. So that's, you know, something different. That's kind of cool. And there's your disc art. So next up, we move to another big pay-per-view, SummerSlam. And this was the first Triple H pay-per-view, I believe. You know, Triple H heading creative for this. And it turned out really well. I would say that SummerSlam this year might be my favorite show from this year. WrestleMania was really good, and the next show I'll talk about was really awesome too. But I really love this show. This is my favorite SummerSlam in years. So, looking at the back, you're invited to the biggest party of the summer, and at SummerSlam. There you go. You got Brock Lesnar bringing in the tractor in the fantastic main event, Last Man Standing. That was just a spectacle. Brock Lesnar bringing in the tractor, flipping the ring sideways. But Roman Reigns would beat Brock Lesnar and retain the Undisputed Championship. But really solid main event there between those two. Awesome. And then we also had Bobby Lashley versus Austin Theory for the U.S. title once again. You had Pat McAfee versus Happy Corbin, and I always love seeing Pat McAfee in the ring. He's really good, actually. You had Liv Morgan versus Ronda Rousey for the SmackDown Women's title. The Undisputed Tag titles, Street Profits and Usos, with special guest referee Jeff Jarrett. And then you had I think this is probably match of the night, in-ring-wise, Bianca Belair and Becky Lynch for the Raw Women's title again. Really awesome match. They always do good stuff in the ring with each other. And then you had the Mysterios, Rey and Dominic, versus the Judgment Day, Finn Balor and Damian Priest in a no DQ match. And the return of Edge, the returning Edge would help them win that match. The Mysterios, I should say. Help them win. And then you had Logan Paul versus The Miz in Logan Paul's first singles match in the WWE after he had signed a contract to be a full-time superstar. Or at least, you know, actual WWE superstar, not just a celebrity. Coming in and wrestling once in a while. So yeah, SummerSlam was a really good show, and yeah, that's all I can say about it. But also a really good show. The first ever Clash at the Castle pay-per-view. So WWE would go back to the UK for the first time, or I should say they went back for a stadium show in the UK for the first time in forever. And big main event here, Drew McIntyre, Roman Reigns. It was a really nice show. And there's your spine there. You got the dragon eye in the background, so that's kind of cool. So yeah, like I said, this was a really solid show. You had Bayley's new crew, Damage Control, taking on Bianca Belair, Alexa Bliss, and Asuka. You had Shayna Baszler versus Liv Morgan for the SmackDown Women's title. You had Edge and Rey Mysterio versus Finn Balor and Damian Priest. And this is where Dominic Mysterio would turn on Rey and then join the Judgment Day eventually. You had a really good match between Seth Rollins and Matt Riddle. And then Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre in the main event would be interfered on by Austin Theory, Tyson Fury, Karrion Kross, but most importantly, Solo Sikoa. He would help Roman Reigns retain the title against Drew McIntyre, which they had an amazing match. I thought Drew McIntyre might win here, but no, Roman Reigns retains and stays champion. But the match of the night, Sheamus versus Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship. Fantastic match. Those two had a hell of a fight here at Clash at the Castle. Very good match between those two. And I'm glad that the Intercontinental title finally got some more time to shine on the pay-per-view scale. And well deserved. Next up, we have another really solid show, Extreme Rules 2022. So this is no horror show like we've seen in the past, but pretty good pay-per-view here. You got your purple and green artwork. They stuck with that, which I think is pretty cool. You got a chair and a fire extinguisher, just a bunch of weapons all over. And then 4 of your main matches here, your 2 women's title matches, and 2 of your bigger feuds. There you go, you got Karrion Kross and Drew McIntyre on the spine there, and those two would have a strap match on this show, and their feud was not my favorite, but it was what it was. You also had Ronda Rousey versus Liv Morgan for the SmackDown Women's title, where Ronda Rousey would win back the title from Liv Morgan, and they would have an Extreme Rules match. You had Bianca Belair versus Bayley for the Raw Women's title in a ladder match. You had the Brawling Brutes, Sheamus, Ridge Holland, and Butch versus Imperium. So that was, a pretty good way to open up the show. A Donnybrook match, they called it, but it was just no holds barred, basically. And then you had Edge and Finn Balor in an I Quit match. A lot of interference, but I did enjoy the match overall. And then you had your main event, the Fight Pit between Riddle and Seth Rollins. And of course, what many people might remember from the show, the return of Bray Wyatt. So Bray Wyatt, after being gone for like a year and a half, made his return to WWE, and he hasn't done much since. I'm going to be honest. I think he's going to have his first match at the Rumble. So, kind of been lacking, I think. I wish he would have done more, but it is what it is. Next up, we go to our second Saudi Arabia show of 2022, Crown Jewel. And as you can see, I have a big main event here, and probably the best thing on this show, and the only thing to watch this show for, or for the most part. Roman Reigns versus Logan Paul. They had a really good match here. Really good main event. It's not like Logan Paul was going to win the undisputed title off of Roman Reigns. But Roman Reigns made us believe in certain spots that he just might beat him. You also had the Usos versus Butch and Ridge Holland in what I think was a pretty good tag title match. You had Braun Strowman versus Omos, just Battle of the Giants. You had Judgment Day versus the OC, AJ Styles and the Good Brothers. They had Bayley and Bianca Belair in a last woman standing match for the Raw Women's title. Not my favorite match of theirs. You had Drew McIntyre and Karrion Kross in a steel cage match. And then you had Brock Lesnar versus Bobby Lashley in a rematch of theirs. And that was a pretty solid match. I mean, it wasn't anything crazy, but it was all right. And you got a Roman Reigns sticker here, so why not, right? And there's your disc art, green and kind of a mustard gold there. So there you go, Crown Jewel. Not a lot to say, but really good main event between Reigns and Paul. And then we move on to the final pay-per-view of 2022, Survivor Series War Games. So the introduction of War Games to Survivor Series, and I thought this was an alright show. It wasn't anything crazy, but I do think some of the matches were really good. You got the whole bloodline here, including the honorary Uce, Sami Zayn, laying out their battle plans. You got Ronda Rousey and Shotzi for the SmackDown Women's title, and they are displayed on the spine there. You also had AJ Styles versus Finn Balor, and what I thought was kind of a slow start of a match, but it got going and ended up being pretty good. And then you had Austin Theory winning the U.S. title in a really good triple threat, actually, between him, Seth Rollins, and Bobby Lashley. And then you had your two War Games matches, the women's, so you had Team Bianca, Bianca Belair, Alexa Bliss, Mia Yim, Asuka, and returning Becky Lynch versus Bayley's crew of her, Dakota Kai, Io Sky, Nikki Cross, and Rhea Ripley. And then you had the Bloodline, so you had Solo Sikoa, the Usos, Sami Zayn, and Roman Reigns versus the Brawling Brutes, Sheamus, Ridge Holland, Butch, Drew McIntyre, and Kevin Owens in your main event. And Sami Zayn really just winning it for the Bloodline, proving his loyalty to Roman Reigns. And you got a cool Undertaker Fathead sticker, which I think it fits. You know, Undertaker, Survivor Series, it's perfect. And there's your disc art, just some chain linked with red and blue. So yeah, that's going to do it for 2022. Like I said, I think a pretty crazy year for WWE, but some pretty good pay-per-views came out of it, and some pretty good wrestling. So let me know your thoughts on this year overall in the comments below. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next one.